So my topic is all about behavior and communication. Under the behavior are four major parts: the migratory behavior, shoaling behavior, fading behavior, and aggressive behavior. So we're gonna tackle starts in migratory behavior. Migratory behavior: mass movement or fish from one place to another or a regular basis are common. Such migratory behavior can range in occurrence from seasonal to daily. Daily migratory typically are for feeding and or predator avoidance. The three general patterns of migratory behavior are oceanodromy, potamodromy, diadromy. So, under oceanodromy. Oceanodromy refers to fishes that migrate entirely within salt water. So, example of these are groupers. Groupers travel into salt water for spawning season. And we saw the video or some in the picture about grouper. They spawn in the grounds in the reef where they grow. And some other examples of these species are black grouper, mutant snapper, Goliath grouper. So next, the potadromy. Potadromy refers entirely to species that migrate within fresh water. So potadromous fish are born in upstream freshwater habitats, then migrate downstream, still freshwater, as juveniles grow into adults before migrating back upstream to spawn. So we saw in the pictures the potadromous life cycle. From the small potadromous fishes are from upstream. They grow in upstream. They grow in upstream. They grow in upstream, then become adult in downstream, then going back to upstream to lay eggs. So example of these are silk kelphin red horse, red lake sturgeon, robust red horse, flathead catfish. These are potadromous life cycle. Next, diadromy. The phenomenon or migrating between the two animals as a regular of the life cycle is broken into those types. Diadromous fishes describe species that spend part of their lives in freshwater and part in saltwater. There are two categories of diadromous fishes: catadromous and anadromous. So the three categories: catadromous, anadromous, apidromy. Catadromous fishes spend most of their lives in freshwater where most growth occurs and migrate into saltwater to spawn. Catadromous fish are born in saltwater, then migrate into freshwater as juveniles, where they grow into adults before migrating back into ocean spawn. Example of this is the American eel, European eel, inanga, short fin eel, and long fin eel. So, the left side we can show the catadromous life cycle of eel. To marine, egg, then estuary, freshwater they grow, then going back to marine for laying eggs. Next is anadromous. Anadromous fishes decide their lives between fresh or salt water, with most of their growth taking places in salt water. Anadromous fish are born in fresh water, then migrate to the ocean as juveniles, where they grow into adults before migrating back into freshwater spawn. So an example of anadromous fish are salmon, smelt, American shad, hickory shad, striped bass, lamprey, gulf sturgeon. So in the left side, the anadromous life cycle. Freshwater, estuary, they grow in the they grow in the estuary, then go to marine. After they become big, they go back to freshwater to lay eggs. Then next is apidromy. Apidromy. Amphibious species move between salt and freshwater for purposes or other spawning. Most amphibious fishes occur on islands and are the members of families as the Gobiidae, Electridae, Galaxidae. Amphibious fish are born in freshwater estuaries, then drift into ocean as larvae before migrating back into freshwater to grow into adults and spawn. So some example of apidromous species are bigmouth slipper, mountain mullet, siraju goby, river goby, torrent fish, dolly varden. So they grow in estuary, they become big adults into freshwater, then go back to estuary for lay eggs. So that is the apidromous life cycle. The next, so that's all about migratory behavior. Then we go next to another behavior, shoaling behavior. Shoaling behavior. A shoaling is perhaps the most fascinating social behavior possessed by a fish. Although most attention has been focused on the most spectacular aspect of shoaling. Schooling. A school of fish often seem to have a mind of its own, moving in coordinated fusion through complicated maneuvers with the members precisely spaced within it. So we saw in the down is a picture of a school of fish, then a shoal of fish. Then there are a lot of questions about shoaling, and this is only the question that I want to ask. A shoal is any group of fishes that remains together for social reasons, where a school is polarized, synchronized shoal. So it's kinda look different, but when we say it, it is like same question, same answer. The next, school of fish, shoal of fish. So it's kinda different, I think. School of fish is say all fish are same because they put together and have the same kind of fish, while a shoal of fish is any kind of fishes gathering together in a one place, like we saw on the video of how groupers spawn. Next, why do fish shoal? So that's some question. The answer is to increase their hydrodynamic efficiency, increase efficiency or food finding, increase reproductive success, reduce risk of predation. So that's the answer of why I mean next. How do fish school? Obviously, the precise structure and movements of polarized schools requires precise sensory contacts away to individual within the schools. The fact that most schools, but not necessarily all schools, break up at most night indicates that vision is the main sensory link. So, fish do have sensory link so that they can gather in one place, like we saw in the picture of how fish school. Note: shoals of small fish can be devastated when a school of predators dives them to the surface, and flocks of seabirds dive down when going to surface. This note is only for, as we can saw in some videos of how school of fish eaten being prey by some predator. Next. So we all done with shoaling behavior. Next is feeding behavior. Feeding behavior. The feeding behavior of fish is diverse as their morphology, which move often than do reflects their general method of feeding. The general theory of optimal foraging. The general theory of optimal foraging, a theory first formulated in 1966 by R.H. MacArthur and A.R. Pianka, stating that natural selection favors animals whose behavioral strategies maximize their net energy intake per unit time spent foraging, includes both searching for prey and handling it, like killing and eating. So that's the theory of optimal foraging according to R.H. MacArthur and A.R. Pianka. They describe that this kind of theory includes how fish or how prey using some tactics or moves to eat their prey, and include the killing and how they handling the kind of tactics they using to get their prey. So there are a lot of some tactics that I never put it in my video because our instructor already teach us the some tactics, the how the speed, and some tactics are speed, then how fish being camouflage. That's all for the optimal foraging. That's only for the feeding behavior. And lastly, aggressive behavior. Aggressive behavior. Aggressive intersection among fishes are frequently observed, particularly in aquaria. Such interaction from direct change of one individual or another, which may result in bites or fights. The best known aggressive interaction among fishes are those related to reproduction and the defense of breeding territories, because they are part of elaborate sets of conspicuous. Some example of the feeding fish in their territories. So fish are being territorial. They fight for their territory. They fight for reproduction. They fight. They fight for themselves to diverse. So next, truth and juvenile is an example of aggressive fish. They defend their laying eggs against its predator in the stream. Also important, the most frequently observed form of territory defense is the nip, in which a defending fish can change an intruder and attempts to nip its caudal pinnacles or sides. So we saw in the lunate tail, this example of some fishes, they use their caudal 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 and or pinnacle to, to make their to make other fishes go away to its territory. There are a lot of examples of this kind of fish. I never in salt water. I never put a picture, but you can search it in internet. We call it the mungit in Visayan word. And some tuna fishes have this kind of tail. So three factors seem to be of greatest importance in deciding which fish wins in a battle. So this is the best way to describe a fish won in a battle, or the characteristic of some fishes to win in a battle. So previous residency is being territorial. The size of the fish, the more size, the bigger the chance of winning. Results or previous encounters. Old match can be triggered, but winning is always a winner in fish behavior. So that's all my report, and that's all that I want to share to everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening about my report of how fish have different behavior and communication. So that's all my report. Thank you.